Hey, everybody. By way of introductions, this is Adam from Yofi. I lead go-to-market at Yofi, was recently acquired by No Fraud, and I also, on the side, run a business called Tilly Golf. And I brought along a good friend of mine and somebody that's been working in the e-commerce space for a very long time. Don't want to age you here, Jason, but I'm going to kick it over, kick it over to you to introduce yourself. I think it'd be helpful context to understand kind of that journey you've been through from an e-commerce perspective, and then, of course, most notably now at Shopware. But I'll kick it over to you for an introduction.
Fabulous. Thank you, Adam, and honored to be here. I'm GM at President of Shopware, which is an e-commerce platform built for the complex e-commerce use cases. I'm also a Tilly's customer, so I also serve two roles. My role's a little easier with Tilly's than yours. But I've been in e-commerce for 25 years, and you're not dating me. My hairline is dating me. I've done almost every job in sales and marketing, merchandising, store operations, to direct response marketing and the like. So, pretty broad view of the world of e-commerce, serving some of the largest e-commerce brands in the world, like Microsoft Store, Symantec, EA and EA Sports, just a ton of technology, NVIDIA, AMD, the like. So a lot of consumer electronic software and gaming experience. Today, most of the work that we do is in the complex use cases in e-commerce. So it's things that are regulated, think government, healthcare, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, things that have huge catalogs, or B2B, and all the complexities related to it. So honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
Thank you for that introduction. Happy to have you. You know, I originally had a few questions that I thought would be really interesting to rattle off, but I think you just mentioned something that poked my attention. There's certain things you can and can't ask when you're using just typical AI tools. When you look at a business that's working in regulated industries and kind of the complexity that comes with that at Shopware,
Yep.
the first thing that comes to mind is, well, how do AI tools, where do they function? How can they I guess give me the 30,000 foot view, at least from a Shopware perspective, before we dive into a CX perspective.
Well, what makes regulated industries so difficult is not the laws that govern each of these industries. It's actually the regulations. And what I mean by that is it's really easy to go by things that are kind of federal laws that everyone has to play by. But what happens is you start to have, local or city governments or things make regulations, all probably well-intentioned. So this is not a political comment in any way. But what it does is it puts a lot of burden on where the data is stored, who can buy what products, how it can get shipped, and even in the cases of some of the categories, if you can advertise them on Google or on road signs or whatever that use case may be. And so AI is no different. In fact, in a lot of ways, some of these industries are being a little bit more conservative on embracing AI because of the potential of regulations and what it means to their business and how they have to potentially kind of adjust in a jurisdiction by jurisdiction place.
Interesting. So that's one of the, I think about the value and the benefits that come from using AI. And a lot of times I've noticed that it's almost a check in the box. Hey, do you guys do AI? Okay, great. Now let's talk about what this could do for my business. So are you seeing that in those industries where, hey, how do you support it? Is it there? But then as you get into it and I start exploring with these businesses, it goes by the wayside.
Well, the word AI is such a broad thing. I think it would be helpful to break down some of the use cases that I think matter the most. And, I think a little bit about all the blue collar work being done by white collar people. These people with professional degrees in a job that their job is sales and marketing and e-commerce. These people do a lot of cutting and pasting and creating and stuff inside of e-commerce platforms and other places. I mean, you run a brand. The first deliverable by AI in the eyes of Shopware is to automate the automatable. And what I mean by that is every task and every click that you do is an opportunity for AI to come in here, and instead of making you a creator, it makes you an editor and an approver. And that is a big fundamental change. I've never met anybody running e-commerce that basically can get through their to-do list every day. And so the goal of AI on its first phase is to really be a productivity gain for the e-commerce job, people who are running e-commerce. And it kind of doesn't matter whether you're in regulated industries or selling t-shirts and things online. It's try to automate the automatable and change the function from being blue collar work to true white collar work.
Interesting. Okay. So what do you view as phase two then? Once that becomes, once we're automating the automatable,
Yep.
and that's more of a blanket statement there, but let's play this game. What does phase two look like to Jason?
Yeah, well, phase 2 is pretty well defined now. I don't know what phase 3 is, but phase 2 is definitely
Okay.
agentic commerce, agentic. So it's a term everybody's using. And basically what agentic commerce means is that instead of just performing a task inside of, your walled garden, you have to go out and perform tasks across multiple data sets, multiple systems, and it does complicated things, and it brings back you the answer. And so if one of the examples we use is we call them Codes, that's a working title, but we created all these little agents inside of Shopware that a sales rep in a B2B use case could say, I really want to make sure that my price every day is 1% cheaper than my competitors. Again, this is a distributor, B2B, maybe pick a category, and they want to compete on price. And so what you do with the agent is you set the competitors, you set the part numbers that are equivalent to the products you're trying to sell. You go off to the best of your ability, and the agent goes and scrapes and finds the prices and will automatically adjust them in your system based on the rules that you've defined. That agent experience actually makes the sales rep's job easier and better and faster because it eliminates all of that pointing and clicking they have to do externally. So kind of phase 1 is the internal application of AI. Phase 2 is how you apply it more externally to be more effective at your job. So that would be the kind of 2 phases that I can see so far.
And any guesses on phase three?
I know.
Don't want to.
Phase 3 will be, well, if you talk to the payment people, everything's a world where it's agent to agent. So, you ultimately, PayPal just came out with, and I think Stripe might be part of it as well, which is basically a standard that says agents can go off on your behalf and complete transactions. And there will be a system at which you can define the rules that can perform that. And if the agent performs it within those rules, you no longer have the right to do a chargeback or a return. You think about it like, hey, go get me tickets to this show. The agent goes off and talks to an agent, get you those tickets, but they came back at $1,000 versus 100. So this kind of agent to agent use case, we're at early innings. But that's some of the kind of corner cases that are going to have to get solved.
Interesting.
And I
In
don't know
my
phase 4, so don't ask.
yeah, we're not gonna get there. In my world, at least in the fraud world, we deal with fraud post-purchase, and
Mm,
in that space, we've got AI fighting it, and what we're realizing is fraudsters are using AI for fraud, and so then it becomes the science of AI versus the science of AI, and who's the artist on top of that science that's better than the other. So I guess we don't need to go down the fraud segment, but circling back to this agent to agent perspective, at least in B2B commerce, I see that as
yeah.
wildly valuable when you've got a business working with another business's agent, which is massively reducing CX workloads for folks and creating all kinds of automations. But where do you see that art on either side? Because AI is only as powerful as how much you can prompt it, how much you can train it. We're learning about agents that are getting names and they're really becoming
Yeah.
they're being armed and giving personalities, et cetera. So in your world, how do you see that art empowering the science of agentic AI?
Man, it's such a good question. The truth is they have to give them names. We call them Codes. We're probably going to change to something else, but you have to give these things names. And I'll tell you why. I am deep, just like you are in the industry. And I listen to all sorts of podcasts, and I can't keep up with what version of Grok or Chat GPT or whatever that we're all on and the differences between them. And so part of the marketing of these AI tools is to actually give them a personality so that people can interact with them, just like we did with Siri and Alexa and all the other things. Okay.
Mm.
I whispered it so my devices didn't wake up.
Oh, they're still listening.
Yeah, they're listening. Yeah. So, yeah, but I do want to go back actually on the fraud thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's the thing that nobody talks about. It's a little bit of you know, when we envision the world of AI and what it can do for you, if we say to a B2B sales rep, hey, what if you can get half your time back, hit your quota earlier and go play golf because of AI? Well, they're in. But if I say to them, hey, what if I gave your boss that capability and they don't need you anymore, well, then they hate it. And so it's kind of the perspective with who has access to this power, to this tool, to this great unlock. Is it the good guys or is it the bad guys? And the answer is both. So that's why tools like Yofi, not to pump your tires, is so important, because returns fraud is so far down the consideration set that it's often attacked by these fraudsters with AI.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I think about CX teams in commerce and all of those different things they're dealing with, fraud's one of them. It's usually slipping by as a cost of doing business because these
Yep.
fraudsters are using AI tools. That is so powerful. So when I think about the dynamic of how CX teams have changed, I think like first prong here is how have you seen CX teams changed? And a little context, some of the trends I'm hearing is CX departments, specifically in commerce, are becoming more of a revenue generating department instead of just seen as a cost drain to a business. And that's because they're doing that phase one of AI. They're automating the automatable, right? And so then they can focus on product questions, et cetera. Um, so from your perspective there, I guess, like, what has been the most dramatic shifts in how CX orgs are operating, and where do you see an opportunity for AI in that world?
Well, I think you hit it well. The role of CX is really the smart ones are trying to attach themselves to revenue in a meaningful way. We're at the preface it, whatever that word is, of what I think will be a pretty big reset of white collar work, at least on multiple levels across our country. And the reason why is because private equity and big public companies all can see the benefits of AI. It's clear to them. And so what they end up doing is they end up using it as a forcing function to say, hey, we've had a run on expenses through runaway inflation, through the cost of capital, through the cost of labor, the cost of building products. We've come through a lot of pain, even tariffs. And they look at that and they say, oh, thank God AI is here. We can finally use it as a way to get more efficient and automate a lot of things. And so what you're going to see, and you're starting to see some of it, is these big companies say to their boards, we need to take out 10, 15, 20% of our labor pool. And they're counting on AI to do that, to allow them to do it. And so when you talk about CX specifically, what I think is going to happen is it's going to be this moment where every organization has to do more with less. And they're going to lean on AI to create a bunch of experiences to test and learn. They're going to lean on experiences that are more happy path than customized. And they're going to try to do more with less designers, more automated generated content, stuff like that. So I do think that we're in a forcing function cycle, and AI is going to be a big reason that people can continue to do their job. Not a very specific answer, more of a
Yeah.
general concept.
I love to play devil's advocate, and I think
Please
about
do.
and I think about what you just stated there. And, I've seen glimpses of articles that talk about, hey, business, especially big retail and big business, big tech are going so heavily into AI. And then you start to see this pullback that happens of, hey, maybe we shouldn't, it's not quite doing everything we thought. And so, you're talking about, hey, we're going to start trimming all over the place as agentic gets better. So let's play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
What are the biggest risks you see there happening?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reports on this, so I don't want to plagiarize them. But the last report I saw said there's 1 million B2B sellers in North America or in the United States, 1 million. And the expectation is that those sellers would be the most expensive resources that could be the most automated. And so that's probably the first place people look when you do these stack ranks of costs and benefits. And then you work your way down. There's 3 million customer service agents in the United States. That's an area that with AI and great new tooling, that probably is an area that gets addressed. And then I think you work your way down. I think designers are probably extremely at risk because of how good some of these tools are now. And then probably work your way down into some developers where you can use some of the new modern tools to do some still pretty sloppy, if I'm being honest, but in the future, I think it gets better. So I'm not a doomer and gloom guy. I
Mm,
think everybody has the potential to kind of reinvent themselves and try to get everyone can turn into a 10x marketer, a 10x developer, or whatever. We'll just need less of them. And it'll give the opportunity for people to go back and and retool up and do something else.
Okay, so shifting gears.
Yeah,
Um, I guess this all I mean, maybe it really isn't shifting gears, but, I see so much of a bias in AI and CX.
yeah,
The specific case here in fraud is fraudsters use all kinds of sob stories and empathy to get their way, and agentic tends to listen and be more favorable towards that. So they have like this bias towards who they're talking to, right?
sure.
Um, we obviously on the fraud side see that as a big concern, but like you on the B2B side, how do where do you see that favoritism happening, or how do you ensure that things are, from an agentic perspective, are prompted the right way? Like what directionally, how should be people be looking at that?
Ooh, complicated question. I think it's a better question for you, honestly. I mean, around fraud and how you can get around the empathy aspect. Yeah, why don't you answer it first, and then I'll come
Okay.
back and give you a B2B one.
Thanks for flipping it on me. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fraud is so much of a better use case for that. If
Yeah,
you
it
lead with
is. And
empathy and you find a way to get a refund or, whatever,
and maybe,
that's such a good use case.
yeah, maybe there's a little bit more bias in our space just because, you know, he, you prompt, even if you're in ChatGPT, right? You prompt something and it'll come back with, it's like, no, be meaner, like, hey, let's be more realistic. We don't need that. Like, I don't need you to compliment my question every time, things like that. And I know ChatGPT is a resemblance of agentic AI for commerce. In fraud, we definitely see a lot of favoritism. And so where we see the opportunity with the right tools is using risk scores and other outside signals to actually
Yeah.
prompt it, not just general information, FAQ information, and all of these. It's learning all kinds of things, but actually using specific technology signals to power or to prompt an agent. So, for me, directionally, I see agentic AI in commerce requiring other technology to power outside variables and outside signals to give it the full landscape instead of relying solely on commerce's website, their FAQs, the information they know about products, previous CSAT, tickets, reviews, the typical things that agents are learning. Um, so that's that's where I see it. I don't know if you're seeing that where agentic AI is using other signals or direct
Yeah.
integrations to power and prompt it the right way.
Well, I'm glad you said what you did because it kind of set up my story pretty nicely. So
Okay.
we're getting to a world where you can't really survive in with a narrow scope of the world. Meaning, if all you know is your little aspect of the tech stack, being a commerce platform, all we know is what's interacted with us. And all you know that's what's interacted with Yofi. And all the payment provider knows is that world is really, really ripe for nefarious bad guys to go do a bunch of stealing and look for vulnerability, right? But if you look at some of the standards that have been created in the world, they did so to make everybody else better. The rising tide floats all boats. I'll give you a couple examples. Swift, the payment system that's basically allows for credit cards all over the world and payment money moving throughout the world. It's a standard that made all banks better, made them more profitable, made them faster, made them better service, made costs come down. That's a good example. Barcodes, another great example. Universal UPCs, like these things, everybody uses them. It makes everybody better. I think we're going to get to the spot where we start to have these standards. And I think agentic commerce is a really, really good example. And I'll talk about Shopware in a minute. Actually, I'll talk about it now. Shopware recognized that, and we built this thing called the Agentic Commerce Alliance. And we did so because we recognized that it's going to take a village of all of us trying to work to create the same standards that we all can play by to make our systems more efficient, to make them communicate with each other, and for merchants to frankly do better. And the cost should come down and the service level should go up. It kind of rises tide, floats all boats. The reason we did that is because we're at a bit of an AOL moment as it relates to AOL to AI. I'm old enough to remember an internet when people would to go to the internet would visit the AOL link on your computer. And it was a portal that you shopped within, and AOL decided how to curate and how to manage and everything. The choice was AOL or the open internet. Okay. Obviously, open internet won. We're at that same spot as it relates to AI. You've got some platforms who are saying, no, 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 our checkout, our payment provider, our models, our LLMs, and you're going to live in this confined, closed system where we believe the world needs to be more open. Open for the reasons you mentioned. So we have that. So it's the Agentic Commerce Alliance. And then secondarily, for those who are in the e-commerce space, they may know Kelly Getch. Kelly Getch is a friend of mine. He started the Mock Alliance, and it really got a lot of great momentum behind Mock Alliance. Microservices, APIs, composable, and headless as a way to say this is the next era of e-commerce. And what he is launching basically middle of November is this concept called Onyx. And it's a standard, the way that orders go in and out of systems. So, Adam, it's a long winded way of saying, I think we're at the spot now where you're going to start to see more standards emerge that allow all
Mm.
people who play to share data back and forth so that we can all be better and kind of lock arms and compete. So, sorry for the long answer.
No, I love that. What do you think moves that needle to open that up?
Well, it's about getting the technology firms of the world to buy in and say they want to be a part of it. They want to appoint meaningful people to these boards. They want to adopt these standards and move it forward. I actually think we're heading in the right direction. I'd be shocked if there's no consortium around sharing kind of good guy logic around customers. I would
Mm.
see something like that happen in fraud. I could see it happening in payments. Um, that I would predict that that's the next 18 months we'll see some more of these things across these dimensions.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that from like a standards perspective or an alliance perspective. I think in the fraud space, everybody's out from, they see a fraudster is the enemy of all, right? So it's
Right.
quite simple to create some sort of a consortium, an alliance. Let's share this data. We do that. We do that with all of our clients. I think there's also this element in CX of everybody has the same mission of treating good people with good experiences. And so
Correct.
that sharing is all about making sure everybody is treating everyone with good good experiences. So I think you're onto something. I know I'm getting pinged here, Jason. So before we drop off, I'd love to hear about where you see this headed. So I guess final question here. Let's look 24 months from now. Where do you see CX teams from an AI perspective, or just like what do you see happening in CX or commerce, I guess we should say, in 2 years' time?
Yeah. So I think the answer is different depending on who the audience is. I think what's going to happen in B2C is you're going to have mass experimentation with AI, and you should. And over the next 2 years, what's going to happen is every organization is going to figure out what tools work for them that solve their business problem. And the ones that are adopting the most and testing and learning are going to rise above the rest. Okay. So that's clear. And I think the mantra needs to be test every tool and every function and figure out how to use the ones that work the most. Ultimately, every business is either trying to push the cost lines down or the revenue lines up. So figure out how to help them do those two things, and life will be pretty simple. On the B2B side, I think the key is the most expensive resource is the sales rep. And so AI's purpose in B2B e-commerce is how do you help those reps make more money? And the number one way to do it is to give them more time. And so 70% of sales reps' time in B2B selling is not selling. It's travel, it's supporting the customers, it's administrative crap. So figuring out how to apply AI to the 70% of unutilized time for sales reps will be the big unlock there. So kind of two different answers depending on the use case.
I
But
love
next
it.
couple of years will be pretty exciting.
Yeah, and maybe we'll be back for the AI CX summit in 2 years' time, and we'll see how you did, Jason.
Yeah, mark my words. I love it when you hold me accountable.
Will do. Well, Jason, such a treat as always. I enjoy every conversation we have. Means a lot for you to do this. So thank you for your time. Jason from Shopware, check him out on LinkedIn. Shopware is a phenomenal tool. So a great partner of ours, and looking forward to more conversations, Jason.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks for letting me be a part of this. Really fun.
Awesome. Bye.